benefits can we find for online games in the classroom? Let's see. Oh, we have several responses now, and some people are using the same one. I wonder what that is. There we go, and you can see there on the right. The other thing that this word cloud has is that it makes the words that have the most votes, it makes them larger. So you can see fun as the most voted reason, the most voted benefit. Interesting. Yeah, they're interesting. They're fun. They're motivating. They're good for review. They increase students' confidence. They're entertaining. Yes, very good. Very good, guys. Awesome. Some of the benefits that I find for using games in the online classroom are that they can reduce our teacher talk time. It's very important for us to let the students be the ones that do the talking. Our English is pretty good, so we don't need to practice. They do. So reducing our teacher talk time is one of the greatest benefits of games because it allows students to be engaged, motivated, and talking. Games are really good for a warm-up, for a practice, or for a review. Therefore, it can be used at any point of the class. They're also a great opportunity for assessment and error correction. Students talk. We get to listen to them. We get to detect where they have their major difficulties and help them with that. We could adapt games for different skills. It depends on what we want to work on, and games could be adapted. And we'll see how to adapt a couple of games. We're going to go over 3 games, and we're going to see how to adapt these 3 games according to the skills that we want to work on. And it's a very, very good idea to, once you start using games, keep a toolbox. Like, have a list of games, have a list of how to use them, how to adapt them, what you're working on, how to, what materials you need. And how to incorporate them in your class. And you can also make note, once you use it again in class, make note of what happened, what didn't, what went wrong, and what could be improved. So next time you can use them even better. Depending on the focus of your lesson, you could do whatever you wish with them. And it's a very, very interesting way to reduce the affective filter, make students feel comfortable, create more rapport, make students relax, take away that stress and that barrier that learning a language implies. So this is a very good option. If we have selected a game and we're planning for it, what are some things we need to consider? These are the things that we need to make a list of to make sure that when we use a game, it matches all the requirements that are needed for a class. So the first thing we need to know is, what's the name of the game? How are we going to introduce this game? What are we going to call it? It's important to name it because next time when you just say the name, students will know the rules and the settings and everything. Second thing we need to consider: what skills, what language points are we working on? What are we practicing? So as I said before, we're not playing games because they're fun. We're using and we're taking advantage of the fun in the games to practice some skill, some language item, something specific that will help them improve their English, because at the end of the day, we are teaching English. Also, sometimes you might be working on a very specific skill, but could use that game for another skill. So are there any additional skills that this game could aim at? We also need to consider the equipment. Okay, what will you need for this game? You need to plan ahead and make sure that everything is there for you when you're using that game. Also, timing is very important. How long are you going to, how much time are you going to spend on that game? How long is it going to last? If it goes way over time, then you need to know how to cut it to be able to move on to something else. So time management is also important here. And how that game will be executed. What are the stages? What will your instructions be? And here it's like really important to plan the instructions. Remember, saying something simple is not so simple. So when we need to grade our language according to our students' level and start describing how we're going to work through a very difficult game, it's really a good idea to have the instructions written down, edited, and reviewed before sharing it with your students to avoid, okay, so what we're going to do here is, I would like you to, well, let's look at this, and then the students don't know what they're supposed to do. And also, it's really important to consider follow-up. Students are going to use language to play a game. They're going to have fun, and you're going to take note of what they're saying. Why? Because we want to go over their errors later, and we want to help them improve the language that was used to develop that game. So include a certain moment for feedback on language. Like, okay, I heard somebody say this and that. How do we say this in English? And kind of go over their mistakes. Because if there's an error that's repeated over and over, a recurring error, we need to deal with that. Enough of that intro. Let's start with the 3 games that we promised at the beginning of the session. Let's start with the first one. Our first game is called Call My Bluff. So just for anybody that's not very familiar with this game, a bluff is a lie. So we're going to lie, yes. We're going to say something that's not exactly right, and our students are going to have to detect that lie for us. So as I said before, we had a checklist. Here is my checklist. This Call My Bluff game is going to work mainly on pronunciation. There are some additional skills I could work on. Vocab, yes, I could work on vocabulary. For this, you could use a YouTube video as an example that I wrote here, but you could use a text, a reading, anything. For today, I have a very small, just as an example, a very short reading, but here you can be creative and use whatever you want. And the idea is that this would be my warm-up to teach minimal pairs. So before going over to pronunciation drills with minimal pairs, I want to go over some pronunciation activities myself, and I'm going to use a reading for this. So as an introduction, I could ask my students, well, do you think pronunciation is easy? Do you think it's difficult? Which words are easy to pronounce? Which words are difficult? What do you think about pronouncing words, isolated words? What about pronouncing them in a sentence? What's more difficult? What's easier? And kind of go over what their thoughts are about pronunciation in general. And then here's my text, a very simple one. To make sure they understand this text, I could ask a couple of simple concept check questions like, okay, so am I talking about the internet? Am I talking about, or I could ask, am I talking about a website, a book, or a TV show? And then have them answer. So with that answer, I guarantee myself that they understand that's something in the internet. So can I trust what's on the internet, or do I have to double check what's on the internet? So when they say, well, double check, okay, so now we are all absolutely clear that our students understand what we're saying. Okay, so let's go to the Call My Bluff part. I'm going to select 3 words from this text. And those 3 words are right here. So the first one, I'm going to read it 3 times, 1, 2, and 3. And I would like you to write in the chat box whether number 1 is pronounced correctly, number 2, or number 3. I'm going to pronounce it 3 different ways, and I want you to write 1, 2, or 3 in the chat box. Okay? So, first one, reliability. Number 1. Number 2, relayability. And number 3, reliability. Okay, yes, wonderful. So everybody knows how to pronounce reliability. But your students might not know. This is the whole point of the game. Okay, next one, game number 2. Name of the game, Tic-Tac-Toe. This time we're going to work on vocab. but this game is adaptable to any kind of skill or system or language item you want. And all you need is a screen to draw 4 lines, 2 down, 2 across. That's it. Let's say that we're working on vocab. So I have a series of words that I want my students to review. They have that list, and you can use like either flashcards, type the word on the board, type it in the chat box. So we just worked on 3 words in the previous slide. So I'm going to say the first word and type it in the chat box, reliability. So in the first team will write their X or their O, and in order to write that X or their O, they need to give me a sentence with the word reliability. So it's not just tic-tac-toe, it's tic-tac-toe with a twist. You need to be able to come up with a sentence using the word we practiced. Once you do so, put your mark on the tic-tac-toe board. What if you can't? Well, then the other team gets a try at putting their mark. So it becomes a little bit more challenging. So you could switch the language item. You could switch instead of coming up with a sentence, pronounce it correctly. Pronounce this word to be able to put your mark, and then you're working on pronunciation. Third and last game, build a sentence. This time it's going to be used for grammar mainly. We could use it for vocab. We could also use it for speaking or pronunciation. And yes, you need a screen or board to write the final sentence or chat box, or actually nothing. Depending on how you deliver this game and this idea, you might not need anything at all. So this could be as an introduction or as a review for a grammar lesson, for example. So first of all, we need to decide what's the grammar point we're going to be working on. In this case, I want to work on the present perfect. So we're going to be working on the present perfect, do some classroom work. We have introduced the language item. We have worked on it. We did some drills. We did some guided discovery. We have done some speaking activities as well. And now I want to wrap things up with a game. So here we have the first person says, I. Second person has to say, I have. I have never. I have never been. I have never been invited. I have never been invited to. And we can continue that way until they complete. And the key here is that they need to include somewhere the present perfect. Hopefully, the team will earn 1 point because they completed the whole sentence. And if not, 0 points if somebody makes a mistake. So it's a good way because you practice their memory. They have to remember everybody else's word, and that will help them a lot with sentence structure. So if they're working on teams, you can give them, before they lose and get 0 points, you can give them a chance to work as a team and help the one person who got it wrong to say it right. But just one saving option. They can be saved only once or twice, or you set the rules that you wish, depending on the level of your students, depending on the amount of students that you have in the class. But what we need as a final product is a grammatically correct sentence.